Good evening and welcome to episode Big 20 of the Above Average Joe's podcast. I'm Kyle, and with me as always is Heath up there in the corner.
Yo.
And up above me there is Matt, as always.
Word up.
And it's another week of interesting sporting times, but at least we have something to talk about this week, don't we?
It's been a week.
That's true. Yeah, it's been a week.
It's been a week.
No actual sporting events going on. It was crazy, but refreshing nonetheless. So, the wild world of sports we live in today. So, anyway, just a few things we'll go over today. We're going to recap our little draft show from last week, the NFL. Maybe hand out some team grades. Seeing as all the kids are out of school, somebody has to get a report card, so it may as well be NFL teams. And maybe some of the best and worst moves that we kind of thought some of those teams made, and what our kind of thoughts are on the virtual draft and how that all kind of was pulled off. And then we'll get into a little bit on the CFL draft because the CFL and the CFL draft is coming up here in a little bit. A few of the rider needs. Few of the rider signings here that we kind of didn't really mention too much, being bogged down with other things and topics in the last couple of weeks. There's some news there. And then some feel-good hockey news that came out here just a couple days ago, and a couple little snags in the NBA in terms of getting restarted, which they seem fairly driven to do. Anyway, all good stuff, I guess. We'll jump right to the NFL. So let's just talk about the draft in general, the virtual draft itself.
Mm-hmm.
There was some apprehension about it, how they're going to pull it off and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. What were you guys' thoughts?
What I did watch, and I'm going to be completely honest, I watched all of the first round, and then I watched bits and pieces of the other rounds. But I enjoyed it. I liked the flow of it. I liked the feel of it. I liked that it had none of the stupid pageantry of the normal one. I liked it. I really enjoyed it, actually.
The stage hugs and the super, put on the right hat and smile.
I thought it was cooler to see
them
with the people that they probably wanted to be with at those moments anyways.
Yeah, big moment in their lives, so share it with the people that kind of got them to that point. I mean, it's pretty cool to go out and shake the commissioner's hand and meet the owner and the head coach, but I mean, overall, those guys are bogged down with the events of the day anyway, so how much attention are you getting? You're better to probably get it from your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what helped you get there. It did set a record. They said 55 million total viewers over the course of the draft tuned in.
It certainly helps that there's nothing else to
exactly
watch.
When you're the only game in town.
Yeah, and
that's a good cracker.
May not be the most corporate event, which I know sponsorship and the money flowing in that's something these leagues always are looking at, but it did flow better without all the garbage getting in between, right?
Oh yeah.
So
I feel like picks were coming in fast and furious, and yeah, I like it.
Well, and the only commentary you got was from the panels of analysts, whatever channel you're on, speaking about the pick. Does he fit? Does he this? Does he that? It was just football. There's no pageantry, like you said. There was no sponsor interruption. Like, to me, it was clean. It was neat. It was football.
Yeah. What do you think, Matt?
That's all.
I'll give you a little bit of a little bit of a negative slant on it, and that's just that pace and all those sorts of things aside, Roger Goodell is a terrible host. My God, he has got the personality of a wet noodle. He is
but he's not supposed to be a host.
I had a time watching him. Like, that really was a huge negative for me.
He seemed like a corporate stiff.
I enjoyed his awkwardness.
Oh, I couldn't stand it. I just thought, he was terrible.
Yeah. Well, probably is a little tough though to be entertaining while you stand there on your own, right? Like, maybe doesn't have that in the repertoire. Obviously doesn't have it in the repertoire, but yeah, it was a little awkward at moments. Did you see in the third round or see any of the clips in the third round when he's like slumped into his brown leather chair?
I heard
like,
about that.
Like, I don't know if he was doing like some, having a few pops while he was calling picks or just vegging right out or what, but
maybe it was a sugar crash from those M&Ms.
Nothing like the commissioner giving you a nice little crotch shot from his chair.
At least he was wearing pants.
You're not
the rest
wrong,
of us
Maddie.
aren't in quarantine, so.
There were some. Find a somewhat genial host, you might have a winning formula for that.
Yeah,
the thing I found that they did was they had a lot of public interest stories, or like those feel good kind of little bit of background on them. This is some sort of challenge that so and so's overcome, and I don't recall seeing those sorts of things before in those arena type presentations. It's almost like, and I don't know if it's just because the draft is the only game in town, so everybody's putting more effort into it, but it really did seem like they'd really done their homework on all the prospects, right? And they had stories done up for everybody. And
ESPN took a little bit of heat though, because they were kind of getting into some of the stories being a little too, well, for instance, one of the prospects' mothers overcame 16 years of drug addiction, right? And you're like, he wasn't ashamed of it, but it's like, you can't really bring up the worst moments of these young guys' lives every time they put one up, flash them on the screen. I like the background. I love it. Same as Maddie does, but I mean, some of the stories maybe shouldn't have been told, though. They're ESPN they took heat for a couple that they said, and I would kind of agree. Like, you don't have to say that, but they need content, right? That's what I think maybe drove it. So,
well, like I texted to you during it, it said it seemed like every second player had a really terrible backstory. It's like, is this what this is about?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you dig enough, there's some bad thing that happened to everybody. But I mean, how personal it was maybe isn't, like you're saying.
Then the
go ahead.
There's a flip side to that too, right? That for every backstory, every sad backstory or hard luck backstory, there was a family sitting in a pretty swanky looking house for that for their selections too, eh?
Yeah, some of them are kids that aren't really hard up on life, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah, this was maybe not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, true. And I was going to say, like, getting into some of these war rooms, virtual sort of stuff, like having the GM and the coach in obviously different houses in, all these instances and that kind of stuff, like pretty hard to conduct to some degree, I would think, but not too bad. But it made for some interesting conversations and things you saw though too, right? Like, I don't know if you guys saw Belichick and
his dog
while they're making their first round pick, it's his dog on the screen, like sitting in his chair, right? And could you get a more plain, regular looking house than Bill Belichick's house? And then they go to Sean McVay's and you're just like, holy Christ,
or
like,
Cliff
what
Kingsbury.
Is this? Like Abu Dhabi? Like, what's going on?
I would imagine Belichick's house probably resembles Belichick though, right?
Yeah, but he's not flashy.
He lives in a sleeveless hoodie.
Yeah. Very fundamental and functional, right? Like, that's exactly right. So, I mean, and then there was like Bill O'Brien kind of having a bit of a hissy fit there as he got off the phone. They caught that on camera. And CeeDee Lamb snatching his second cell phone away from his girlfriend, who apparently had dated an NBA player for a little while. So take that as you wish. But
I believe he was the one who couldn't keep his hand out of his pants either.
Yeah, I believe so. And then this is like the most Raider thing maybe ever in the draft, or the Raider thing to do, but leave your draft board up behind you on camera like Gruden did. It's like, what
Really?
Like, yeah, his whole draft board. Did you notice it? It was like right in
Great.
behind where he's sitting, and you're just like, dude, your draft board. It may have been just players that he didn't want to pick or guys he figured were gone. You couldn't really read
Maybe
it
it
in
was a
detail, but at the
smoke
same
screen.
time, you're like, everybody else either has that hidden or they're doing it on
That's
a
hilarious.
computer, right? So yeah, pretty old school, but yeah, just maybe forgetting how everybody is seeing him, right? What he's presenting to the
Or
world. So, or it was a
maybe
big
it's
smoke screen.
subterfuge.
Yeah, maybe the
Hey,
ultimate
that was a big part of
troll
D-Day,
job.
right?
Yeah, maybe. But then you
Hey,
see their
Murray.
picks and you go, nah. But
Probably not.
probably not. Anyway, well, I was going to get into a few of our picks. We did smoking good with our draft
I
last
hope
week.
you
Right,
were our
right
crack
out of the
analysis
gates.
team and tells us how good or bad we did, because I didn't look.
I would have to say, in terms of our overall accuracy, like player by player, I looked through a lot of other drafts that analysts did too, and they were no better than we were.
It's probably because
More
we use their lists.
Well, it's a collection of data and information, and you make your own decision.
I used
That's
a
what we
bunch
did,
of
right?
people's lists.
But at the same time, as much as they were probably accurate as we were accurate, it was more what I noticed is we at least got some of these team needs positionally correct. Maybe they didn't pick the receiver we thought they'd pick, but they did pick a receiver. Like there were some definitive, like some analysts, I won't mention names, they definitively picked someone was going to be drafting a wide receiver. They picked a safety. They picked an O lineman. They picked a D end. It's like, could you be more wrong? So in that respect, I mean, some of the names maybe don't match up perfectly, but they seldom do in some of these things, especially when we're doing one without trades. The order doesn't stay the same, but for the most part, we were pretty good. I would have to say.
Well, we're
in
above
terms of
average, right?
I would say we're a little above average, but at least identifying what was available and what their greatest need was as to what they were probably likely to pick, we're pretty good. I thought we were pretty darn good. So, couple of curveballs, head scratchers, but we'll get into draft grades and that kind of thing after. So, in terms of a grade for the above average Joes,
What do you
would
give
say
us?
I would say we're about a B minus, just above average.
Well, we're better than the Packers.
Yeah, well, what's the lowest grade these guys give? Because I've read a few columns about who got what for grades, and they were like, well, nobody really gets a D. Like I've seen a few C's, but
I barely saw any C's. So
do they give Fs?
no.
Like they don't fail kids at school anymore. Why would they fail these guys'
Get a
draft grades?
participation ribbon.
In that case, they need to learn to grade on a curve then, so they can get some more normalized results, right? Or a more normal
But the thing is, it's arbitrary.
distribution.
It's arbitrary to grade
Yeah.
a draft. It's
It
arbitrary.
absolutely is.
Yeah, you know when you grade a draft 3 years after.
Exactly. So in
In
3 years,
if the guy's anything, he's done something. If he's a nobody, he's obviously a nobody. I actually go back. Do you ever do your fantasy football? You buy a book, you read through it, that kind of thing. You get the old prediction ones. No, I've saved all mine that I've ever bought. I stopped buying them about 3 years ago because when you go back, and I stopped buying them for the simple reason that when you go back and you look at one from fantasy football from 2003, there's shit they say in there. You're just like, man, could you be more wrong? Like the one was the year when Akili Smith came out. He's everything you want in a quarterback. Everything that you could want, he has. And you're just like, he's a surefire stud. He was a bum. Like complete opposite. So it's like some of these guys talk out their ass. And
all
really,
of them talk out their ass. Otherwise, they would be doing that job.
Well, and I mean, some of it is scheme and fit. And that's where I tried to look at some of the picks that were made and go, scheme and the fit's there for that kind of skill set. So, okay. Wouldn't have maybe been my best player, but for your scheme and fit, he was the best player. So, what the analyst says in the book doesn't necessarily maybe have that kind of background in terms of why he came to that sort of decision. Too many people go off what they do in the gym shorts. So anyway, I would have to say, B minus. Not bad.
Impressive.
Not bad
Not high,
for
not
not much
average
work.
Joes. Well, like I said, some of it was we got the right position, not always the right player. But some of these teams,
I wanted to work
picked
out
up.
a lot more players, but with the social distancing, I just couldn't bring them in for workouts to really get a good
Yeah.
sense. So I went with just, the surefire picks. So it is what it is.
Fair enough. Anyway, but not too bad overall. There's a couple of picks that I kind of scratched my head with, and I don't know your thoughts. There's a few people I was reading were praising the Chargers, and we all know what we think about chargering.
Yeah, chargering.
But
there's
picking
lots of
Herbert at
people
number
gooing over
6,
what the Chargers did.
Well, they were winning high praise for moving up into the bottom of the first round to get a linebacker, which they needed. But did they pay too much? Was it too much draft capital? Whatever. More what I thought is I was seeing some people, and a lot of the people even on the draft were saying, oh, they got their guy and they didn't have to trade up to get him at number 6. He came right to them. But I don't really think Herbert's that good of a football player. He's got
the measurables.
Stuff to work. He's got the measurables. So to me, he's more of the Josh Allen type quarterback.
Yeah, but Josh Allen's actually turning out to be a lot better than some expected. So I guess you can hope for that.
Right, and they slowly were kind of breaking him in and limiting his throws per game and that kind of stuff to break him in, and not really getting the pressure on to win. Herbert has a pretty darn good team that thinks it should be in the playoff hunt. Is he really capable right now of getting in there, or even in a half a year? Like, they got a pretty good team. So I know they talk about, they have a bridge quarterback and everything else, but to me, he's a little bit like Josh Allen. He's big, he's tall, he's lanky, he can move good, he can throw the deep ball, but he's not that accurate. And his decision making has been a little suspect. So you're kind of like, those are kind of the two things I want out of a quarterback. Good decision making accuracy.
Sounds like the bulk of the talented quarterbacks out there. There's so many
like Jimmy G.
That they're this and they're that, but they lack decision making and accuracy, which are probably the two most important things as a quarterback. You can get by without a rocket arm and still be a quarterback.
Drew Brees is a prime example. Yeah,
sure. You got to be able to execute a play. For
sure. So I don't know. I just kind of thought, number 6, he seems like a project guy, and you don't take a project guy at number 6. So maybe a bit of a stretch. And there's usually, I'd say, 50% of the quarterback prospects. If you look back over history, some of these guys are complete washouts. Like, don't even turn into backups. So out of the 4 taken in the first round, if you said 50% weren't going to work, I would be leaning towards him not working.
Mm-hmm.
I really would, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tua's got his warts. Burrow's the only for sure that I think is going to be at least a solid quarterback. The other 3,
you can't say he's for sure.
Well, and he's in a bad spot with talent and that kind of thing. Like, I think
Cincy did a pretty good job
team
with the draft.
Say again?
I think Cincy did a pretty good draft to help him, though, in this draft.
Yeah, for the most part, for sure. So, but I mean, just going to that 50% rule. If 50% of these guys can't even make it as a solid backup, that's, so
yeah.
Time
just because you're
tell.
the number 1 overall pick doesn't mean that you get to play whenever you want, right?
Jamarcus Russell.
Or
you still have to earn your way around.
Jameis Winston.
So, that being said, a couple of teams you guys maybe thought did a lot better or a lot worse. than expected. I'll start with one of the ones I really didn't like their draft was the Oakland Raiders. I thought we were kind of chuckling at me picking, Love at 12 for them. But I think if they'd have picked him, at least they could have sold it a little better than what Oakland does have.
Speed kills, man.
They stretched on a DB. They picked the wrong receiver first. The first receiver off the board shouldn't have been Ruggs. He's not the best. He's the fastest, but true to Oakland style. He looked good in shorts. He's the fastest 40, so I guess we'll take him. Not that he'll be a bad receiver, but he's not a number one. He's an accessory, a secondary receiver. So I don't know how they could pick him in good conscience and then not deal back. I really think that the fact that CeeDee Lamb slid to the Cowboys at 17 is primarily because of the Oakland Raiders. That was the most ridiculous thing maybe I saw in the first round.
For sure.
Maybe. You're looking for a number one. He has the number one profile down pat to a T. That's your guy. Take him.
Yeah, you'd think. Well, my Niners passed him over too.
True, but didn't really have a huge need there, right? They got they got some good players in that position group in the franchise, in their organization already. So, here's Oakland looking for a true number one, and they go pick the shorter, faster player. Like, you look at CeeDee Lamb in terms of his production, jump balls, fighting. He was the only guy at his college. He fought doubles and triples for almost 3 years now. Like, the guy can win it, and he still got stellar numbers. They knew the ball was going to him, and he still came up with it. That's what you want in a number one. He has everything you want in a number one. Why wasn't he picked? That was a scheme fit, in my opinion, and they blew it. Jerry Jeudy going to the Broncos as the second receiver off the board. Judy's a route runner, more of a number two receiver. That's what they needed. That's what they got. He fit what their requirements were, scheme and otherwise. So, yeah, Oakland blew it. But what about you guys? Who'd you think kind of blew it?
You can go first, Matt.
Oh, I thought you were gonna. I could just see you seething and wanting to go Packers.
Well, I think the Packers.
I'd like your take on that, because that's one of the most interesting discussions I've heard around this.
Okay,
I
well,
don't
so
think
here's
it
my
necessarily
thoughts.
means that Rodgers is headed out of town immediately.
I think the Packers did not draft well, but I don't think that is the pick that made their draft bad. It was the subsequent picks, because actually, if in our mock draft, if Heath hadn't taken him at 12 by the Raiders, I was going to take him with my pick at the Packers at 30 if he was still available. I don't hate that pick. It is a business, and players come and go, and you have to think about the team. Even when you have an MVP quarterback. I am the biggest Rodgers fan that you can find. Like Heath says, I probably would have his children if I could, but I can't, so I won't. But he's 36 years old.
His career's going to end.
He's 36 years old. He's won one Super Bowl 9 years ago.
He got within a game last year.
I don't think the team is worse than last year. I think the team is at least as good as last year. So what's he worried about? He's also broke his collarbone twice, and we had to play with shitty quarterbacks for half of the season. So
you and a lot of other franchises that had top passers who went down and there was a severe drop-off. Like, that's expected, right? Severe drop-off. So facing a severe drop-off, wouldn't you try to make that as minimal as possible?
Well, for sure. but it's the long-term thing too. Like if Rodgers decides to stick around to play till 40, fine then. Okay, so then if hopefully this kid is tuned up and ready to go, and you can trade him away like a Matt Hasselbeck. Like
or Jimmy Garoppolo.
Or anybody. Like, just because you have somebody at that position doesn't mean you shouldn't draft another person. And maybe it'll light a fire under Rodgers' ass and he'll be the MVP that I'm hoping he'll be this year.
True. And if anybody should understand the business side of it, having gone through it with Favre like he did, and coming out the benefactor of the whole thing, right? Rodgers benefited greatly from sitting 2 years behind a legend and learning, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
So for someone like Love, I mean, how much does Rodgers have to mentor him? Well, maybe a little bit, but it's not like he has to wipe his nose and change his diaper for him. Like,
the kid watching.
They're in the same quarterback room.
Yes.
You know, he'll learn shit.
Exactly. You learn by the people you're surrounded.
And in Rodgers' case, he's in no position to criticize that type of move when he was the benefactor of that kind of move.
If he really thinks that this kid's going to come in and threaten his job, then he has more issues than playing quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Then he's already not my guy.
Exactly. And I don't think that's who he is.
That's like a Donald Trump sense of confidence.
Yeah, I don't
how dare you criticize me? I'm very, very fragile.
Well, and I mean, if you look at it though too, right? Like, you know, everybody should be open to criticism. This kid is coming in. He's got some warts he has to work on. Rodgers, like Kyle just mentioned, 9 years, right? Since the Super Bowl. So he's obviously got some shit that he can be critiqued on, and why hasn't he done it? And da. So the only thing that I can really see that I didn't like about the move is I didn't like giving up capital to go up and get him. But at the same time,
I didn't understand the moving up, but I didn't hate the pick.
But you also saw somebody move up like Tampa Bay one position, and it's like, well, why would you move up one position? There's the threat of somebody else making a deal on the other side of the table
for sure
with that other team. So we don't know who that other team potentially was that was going to move up, but he's a talented enough kid. Somebody might move up and try to develop him. And the Saints being very, very much rumored and very close in terms of that draft slot to where the Packers had to move to get him. They immediately went out and signed somebody right after who's 26 years old and threw for 5,000 yards and secured Taysom Hill, right?
Hill.
Like, I don't want to say the Saints, but it kind of looks like the Saints are on the hunt for developmental quarterbacks and guys they could put in the wings, right? So I didn't like the move up so much, but I mean, you do what you got to do to get the guy you need to get. And it wasn't that steep. It's a fourth rounder, not a huge price. But in terms of criticism of the Packers, though, they're in win now mode, right? If you really think about it, they're in win now mode. Well, they're one game away from the Super Bowl with a star quarterback, right? Yes. So how do we go over the hump? How do we go over the hump?
Well, it's not going to be by drafting one of the draftable wide receivers. That is not going to put them over a hump, because we all know that it takes 2 years to 3 years for a receiver to really get into the NFL game.
You get an Anquan Bolden, or you get a Larry Fitzgerald, or you get lucky. There's guys that come in year one that do well, but I don't think that they're going to be so good so fast that they should overtake your number two. Like Valdez-Scantling and Lazard and Kumaro, and they have some pretty goddamn good receivers. They just need a little time. So to kind of lead into your point, 2 to 3 years, well, that's where all those guys are sitting right now.
And they've been working with Rodgers for the last 2 to 3 years. So wouldn't you rather roll the dice with those guys? Like, this whole not being able to work out a lot of guys and all those things, I think that affected a lot of how these draft boards went.
But it's the same thing, like I said before, though. It's like the hockey team that gets off and blames the ref or blames the ice. You can't blame the ice. The other team was on the same fucking ice. So
right, but I mean, if you don't have all of the facts, you're going to go with what you know, not with what you don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Or the guy you feel the best about, right? Right. Exactly. So, I mean, the one that kind of puzzled me, if I have to hand a little bit of criticism to the Packers, I would have to say, you're a Packer fan. You watch all the games. Who were their best two players last year?
Devontae
He
Adams.
didn't play the whole year. Like who was a stalwart?
Well,
Who was
Adam
there
Jones.
game in, game out?
Adam Jones.
And Aaron
And
Rodgers.
Aaron
Rodgers.
And the first two rounds, they went out and got somebody in the same position as their two best players.
Yeah.
But that being said, one's 36 and one's a running back who's maybe not on the every down back sort of size scale and could use a breather. So they went out and got a banger at running back.
Sounds
Because
like Jamal
everybody's like, well,
Williams.
they shouldn't have picked those two guys. They needed a receiver.
Sounds like Jamal Williams'
maybe.
job might be in jeopardy.
What's that?
Sounds like Jamal Williams' job might be in jeopardy.
Well, and why not? What's wrong with that? He was not lighting the world on fire. He's okay, serviceable. But if we can upgrade it, we upgrade it, right? And then the stylistic difference between who they got and Williams, like this kid's coming in, he's a banger. They need a banger.
Right. And he's cheap.
Does Jones have that dimension? Not to the degree
No,
that
he's not
the
a
guy they
banger.
drafted.
He's
So-
your home run hitter.
Right. So all these analysts that are like shitting on it, and it's like, but they're the same guys who run around and say you need a compliment back, right? I need a pass catcher to the banger. I need a banger to the speed guy. This kid, they got a complimentary back in the whole process. So even their second round pick, maybe not a super huge need, but it's still something they can use. Like it wasn't a wasted pick. So, given that they were picking that far down, I think AJ Dillon was one of the better backs available once all the, top 4-5 studs or more notable guys went. So I don't know. I didn't think it was too bad. They're taking a lot of criticism for it, but if Love
They're taking
comes out
criticism.
in 2 years,
You got Stephen A. Smith sitting there going, Aaron Rodgers should be asking for a trade. He's been disrespected. Blah, blah, blah. It's
well,
like,
if you're a little bitch,
so how much do you
right?
think? How much do you think they're going to pay Winston to be Drew Brees' backup?
10 or less.
Okay, so what is Love's contract going to be for his 5-year rookie contract per year?
On average,
Yeah.
5 to 7, maybe.
So there's your value in your backup quarterback.
Right. Now, can he start by the end of the year? Could he start the last 2 games of the year if need be?
Hopefully.
I would say so. And at that point, I would like to know that maybe I got a little confidence in going forward with this guy, because you should be able to learn something, show something, right? Not necessarily maybe even going to win the game, but at least I'm going to be able to see some progress, right? And measure it.
Right.
So why not? But
and if Rodgers
for
stays
those
healthy and you never have to see the kid, great.
Right.
Then at the
Well,
end of
and-
2 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, then you trade him.
Well, and quite honestly, you never know when these guys are going to fall off. Like all of a sudden, it just disappears. The will to play is still there. Steve Young had the will to play, but he physically couldn't do it anymore.
That's always in.
So
Everybody's
at
one
that point,
headshot
what do you
away
do?
from being done, right?
Right. So I mean, Rodgers with the collarbones and nicked up and everything else. When he's 39, who knows? Yeah, he wants to play till 43, but maybe you got to play till 43 somewhere else.
Hey, Jeff.
But very
So-
few guys ever actually get to pick that time, though, right? Usually,
Right.
it's forced upon them because nobody will hire them.
Well, and
in
you
the
look
end.
at a guy like Rodgers, whose mobility is part of his being an exceptional quarterback. That's declining. Some guys that played till 40, like a Manning, Peyton Manning, or even right now with Tom Brady, their mobility was not their calling card.
No, never was.
So as that declined, it wasn't as big of an impact on their total game. When Aaron Rodgers can't run very well anymore, or his mobility has declined, can he function the same way as those guys when he's never been forced to play that way? It's tough. So all of a sudden the fall off, because his style is now not something he can do anymore. That matters, right? So I don't think Aaron Rodgers can play till he's 42 or 43. It's just not part of the style that he plays. Russell Wilson comes to mind. He's not
I was just
playing
gonna say the
that
same thing.
style when he's 40 years old. It just it doesn't compute in my mind, right?
And
like
the NFL's changing. Like
it is changing, but I mean the
Mahomes
style
and
is
Lamar Jackson have
style.
changed the NFL. You know which way it's going.
Yeah, I heard the same thing about RJ3. I mean, the more my point is yes, it is. I totally agree. It is changing, but what you are is what you are.
For sure.
And especially a guy who's long in the tooth like Rodgers. He's played that way for what, 12, 14 years?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he is. You can't ask that dog to learn a new trick.
No. Nope.
It's just, maybe he can adapt, but there'll be a fall off.
But it is a copycat league, and all these leagues are going to try and find the next Mahomes.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And
I've
heard Love compared to Mahomes, so.
So what do you say to a guy like Stephen A. Smith who's saying, "Oh, I demand a trade"? What's wrong with continuity? They went from Favre to Rodgers and then to Love. That team, realistically, for 30 plus years, maybe even pushing 40,
you're the envy of every franchise
every year
in the NFL. You're the envy.
Like,
that's what every team wants.
Like you're a contending team for the playoffs at the very least for 40 consecutive seasons. That would be amazing. How would you not want that if you're a fan? Like, continuity
I
matters.
honestly don't see Packer fans, the ones up in arms. It's all of these analysts on TV.
They had to have a story. Yep, for sure. I agree. So,
hey, what about Maddie's team?
San Fran, how do you think they did? Or what was your team where you went, what the fuck are they doing? Was that San Fran?
Actually, I was quite impressed when I got the note that they had traded around to acquire an all-star offensive tackle, and then about 10 minutes later, another piece of breaking news came from my 49ers app informing me that Joe Staley had retired.
That worked
out well.
Yeah, that was honestly, out of all the teams, I think that the 49ers did the best job overall. And not just in terms of the draft. They used some of their draft capital to acquire Trent Williams, who was on the block during the season. They were looking for a first or a second at the very least. They got him for a third and a fifth. And he's 31. What the fuck? And he's still one of the top 5 left tackles in the league. Mm-hmm. So you got a superstar left tackle for a third and a fifth. That's a great way to use your draft capital, especially when you're a Super Bowl contending team with a gaping hole at one of the 4 most important positions in football.
I'm not sure where the hell.
That was a steal.
Yeah. I don't know where John Lynch learned to build a football team, but he sure as hell did a good job of learning.
And see, there was a couple of teams in the Williams thing for, during the season, everything else, but sometimes it's your timing. The Redskins really wanted some kind of additional draft capital out of dealing Williams. They waited too long. And the market wasn't as good anymore. It wasn't as good as they thought. So then they get hard up in the middle of the draft because we're right in the middle of it. I need the capital now, right? I'm short that quarter for the Coke machine.
Ring.
Exactly. So they sold him for a quarter. So good on Lynch for the timing of it all too, right? So what did you think of their selection of Kinlaw?
That was a great pick.
At their first, I thought it was a fantastic
because they picked up a pick and then took who they were going to take anyways.
Right.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I think overall, just generally, they did pretty well. I like I said, I'm no draft expert, and I will not even pretend that I had. Even a full, I didn't even make the entire first round. I kind of had half an eye on it while it was happening, but no, I thought overall the Niners did really
they did fantastic.
They didn't have a lot of needs and filled the needs that they had. So
well, and getting a good young receiver, like they deepen their receiver group with picking one later, but they didn't stretch too far for him. Like they're just deepening the group. It wasn't a high pick. I mean, it was a first, but it wasn't their best first. And then, watching Buckner get dealt for that 13th pick and getting a $19 million a year contract, Kinlaw is about the closest guy I could see in the draft to a Buckner, and they got him for 5 years on a rookie deal. So they saved a ton of money, had the same type of players, same type of rotation in town, and they got a little deeper at a couple spots. Traded away a running back for a pick that they didn't maybe need. They can find running backs on whatever street corner, those guys. That's the Shanahan way.
Who cares?
Yeah. So no,
running backs.
I thought they did fantastic. And then they got a starting corner with Gladney, right? Like he's a tough little son of a bitch. And they didn't really need one. Sherman's a little older, but hey, he gets to come in, compete. They're deeper. They're ready to make another run. So yeah, John Lynch, get that man a raise. That was a clinic. I thought he did fantastic. So who was the worst? I said Oakland, but I mean, who potentially was the worst? How'd you guys think Miami did with all their picks?
I thought Miami did pretty good.
Five in the first 2 rounds, right? So
well, they got Tua.
Got
a tackle.
Yeah.
What else did they get?
They got a corner, I believe. Just looking at my list here quick.
To?
Miami went out and got Robert Hunt at guard. They got a tackle, a guard. Tua. They got a D tackle. And then where did I see his name here? No, they did very well. Considering. But if you have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, you probably should come out pretty good.
I would hope so, yeah.
They probably played the Tua thing better than most teams, better than a Miami run organizations ever played it. They put out a couple really smart smoke screens on the whole thing. It paid off. It really paid off. So scaring everybody into thinking, they're going to deal up and they have more draft capital than anyone. They scared teams out of not going up to 3 or 4 to get Tua. And Tua fell in their lap. That was genius.
Yep.
That was genius. That was not a Miami. That was a Belichick type move, or some of the high end guys. They control drafts in that manner. That's not a Miami thing to do, I guess. So, another one. What did you guys think of the one last thing I'd like to mention is what did you guys think of the top running back selected? Kansas City takes Edwards-Helaire, who is not anybody's top-rated running back.
No, but I think he's perfect for them.
Yeah, scheme-wise, he fits, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of leads into what I was saying before, where you're like, my top back personally in the whole draft, I know Swift was there, Taylor is a pure old-school running back with that getaway speed, and at 230 pounds, that just doesn't show up on every draft, never mind every draft board every year. So to me, he was the best runner in the draft, the best player at the position. And then Swift, but that's splitting hairs. This kid was not the top guy, but scheme-wise fit. Like I said, sometimes they were picked because of the scheme fit more importantly than anything else. So could they get any better as an offense, though? Like, fucking track team, man. Holy. Unreal.
Until they have to pay.
Well, they're going to have to score 50 a game because they didn't select a corner for, like, eons, and they're pretty short in that secondary. So I don't know where they're getting corners. Maybe you got to get the laces replaced in your old football shoes, Kyle. You can go down there.
Yeah. Yeah, my
cup of tea.
The old gray mare's hips ain't what they used to be.
Buy a bigger whip. Anyway.
So I noticed that the Patriots didn't draft a heir apparent.
Yeah.
they've got to be looking at the free agent market, no?
I think they're
Well,
happy with the kid they got.
I think they're going with Stidham.
I think so.
Wow.
To your comment, Maddie, they asked Belichick afterwards if that was, and he's like, it wasn't by design that they didn't pick a quarterback, but I just don't think that there was one in a spot where they felt they could go and get him. There was some rumors about a couple of names, but the amount of draft, they're not trade up and spend big as it is. Well, you could see by the pad he was sitting in there on camera. But I mean, Cam Newton, they said absolutely no way are they going to go after Cam Newton, and Winston's off the market. So really, who's really even out there as a veteran?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody of note. I think they're going with Stidham. It's his to lose.
You might as well.
And hey, why not, right? So
I guess Bill's just that confident in his system.
Well, they did have a spectacular defense. Like, it was like week 8, and they were like setting records and stuff. Like, they were killing it at the beginning of the year. So the defense has been reinforced a little bit, and they're pretty much intact. So, how much is Stidham going to have to do? If he doesn't have to do a whole lot and they can win 10, 12 games again, kind of tarnishes Brady's reputation a little, doesn't it?
Well, this is going to be the interesting thing to watch this season. I think.
For sure. For sure. I really didn't think they'd go with Stidham.
Tom Brady was Stidham at one point.
He was. Actually, the one guy that I like in the draft was Fromm, 5th round to Buffalo. Fromm has got no one thing about him where you're like, "Ooh, shit, I really like that. He's better than everybody else." There's no discernible one area where he stands out above the rest of the draft class. But he wins. He's accurate. He's in a pro offense. He throws with timing and accuracy. He's just got poise. Like, he kind of looks just like a regular professional quarterback.
What do you want one of those for?
Yeah, like, why do you need a wow guy? Why does anything have to be wow? Like, he ran a 5-second flat 40 time. Not fast, not slow, not anything, just average. He's our quarterback, the above average Joe's quarterback, because he's just above average.
Above average.
Yeah.
Not amazing, just above average.
And just to kind of wrap up on the NFL stuff, there were 2 guys I was watching kind of to the end, just keeping a tab on things. And there was a couple of guys, I believe it was show 11, where we were talking about a few guys combine, that kind of thing. Levante Bellamy and Jermichael Hasty. And I kind of thought they both were guys that would be a little bit undersized and not big programs, whatever, and maybe should come to the CFL if they don't get drafted. Both were undrafted free agents, and they got invites. So Levante Bellamy's with the Eagles, and Hasty is with the 49ers. So maybe that's the 49ers, Maddie. Maybe he's going to take that spot.
You could see those coming back possibly Labor Day-ish then, eh? If they get cut.
Depends when they get cut. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the Bellamy kid, he's an undersized back. Like, he's more of a kick returner, 3rd down pass catching back down there, shifty, nimble, that kind of thing. Same with Hasty. Baylor was kind of a place where they run a lot of those CFL type schemes, wide open, quick passing game, dump off second. So Hasty's very well versed in that style of football too. Spread them out and away it goes. So I don't know. I kind of want to see if they actually stick down there or if they actually come to the CFL. And if they do, if they actually work out all right. So they look both like pretty talented players, but just not the right size to fit, down there.
It's a long way between getting a free agent tryout and actually getting to play on the team, right?
Right, exactly. So anyway, a couple of guys, little fun side note. So anyway, let's move to some CFL stuff since we're talking CFL.
Right.
Yeah. Haven't talked Riders in a little bit, eh?
Haven't.
So the last couple of weeks, they've signed a linebacker, a corner, and a D tackle, and a running back. So
I like
One
the
being
running back.
Matthew Tom. The running back's intriguing. We'll go to him last because I think that'll be the longest conversation. But Thomas at linebacker, 6'3", 230, ran a 4.6. Got a little cup of tea here or there in the NFL. Good training camp guy. Seems like he might be big enough, fast enough to maybe play the middle here. Who knows? Could be camp fodder, whatever, but a signing. Damon Webb. Looks like he was an NFL safety, but he's not super, super tall or anything. But I think he's a CFL cover linebacker. He can cover. He can play safety. He's got good tackling skills. So why not, right? So we use that style of player. He's a bit of a tweener there, but perfect for a position here. So I thought, hey, why not? So he'll be a guy to keep an eyeball on. So he's 5'11", 210 pounds. So sort of that dime backer that we use here, style of players. So, and then Trenton Thompson, who was part of Team 9 in the XFL, played at Georgia. Looks like a D tackle. Maybe he can do a little pass rush on the inside. So another defensive lineman, which is never a bad thing. And then Jeremy Langford. Kyle's probably going to pull out his Langford Bears jersey.
I've heard that name before.
Did you ever have him in fantasy football? I was thinking about this today. Either you did or I did. I remember one of us having him on one of our fantasy football teams.
No, I think I did.
Did you? Yeah. You just try to erase it from your memory, being a Bear?
I try to erase a lot of Bears from my memory.
Fair enough. But, he's a 210-pound guy with some gears and some really good hands. He's a 4th-round pick down there. He's 28. But to me, he looks like a big version of Thigpen. Could probably be a good kick returner.
Well,
he has legit 4.4 speed. He catches well. So, to me, a bigger version of Thiggy would have been maybe not a bad thing. And I think a guy who can catch that well could be a perfect complement to the guy we have in there. So
for sure.
Another running back. That's like 6 now. O'Day's got on the practice route,
Hopefully we get to see them.
Right. So that's, exactly right. I really hope we get to see him in some capacity. So, and then looking at the draft here in a couple of days, we won't go through a mock draft because, CFL is the most unpredictable draft you could ever imagine. But the Riders are picking at number 7, and they don't have a second or third round pick. So that 1st round pick, I don't know. Would you guys deal back
to pick up more picks? I would wait and see what's there.
Yeah. If somebody
if
really
an
liked,
lineman's still sitting there. But I don't know where else we really are in big need. Always like to grab some O-linemen, though.
Right. Is that our greatest need, or what do you guys feel our biggest need is? Yeah. Would you like a little bit better Canadians at the linebacker position, a little bit more behind Judge, special teams, that kind of thing?
I suppose Hurl's probably not coming back.
If Jordan Williams is still available at 7, we'll take him.
Maddie, I like, but I don't think he will be.
No.
Who knows, though, right? CFL draft, it could be anything, but definitely
it's such a weird. Yeah, the CFL draft is such a different animal because it's a secondary option just because of economics and what do you do?
Yeah.
And how much does a board change right after the NFL draft?
Well, exactly. I was thinking
you're working on it.
You have to have this after the NFL draft, right? Because
but I mean,
really
even
depends on some of those results.
If we were all in the same front office together, we can make all the board we want, but till that NFL draft goes, it really doesn't carry that too much of weight. You can't really make one, right? Gallimore and Claypool are the 2 big Canadians of note. Well, if they both go in the 6th and 7th, that completely changes, them going in the 2nd round, 3rd round of the NFL draft, right? to me, Gallimore and Claypool aren't even draftable in the CFL. I wouldn't even put a 7th rounder on it. I don't think either of those guys has. If they show up here, it's in 5 to 7 years, and there's no guarantee that they'd even want to for the money they're getting versus the money they already have.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I kind of feel like, if they don't go D line or O line, O line, I really think they should go receiver. There's a couple of good receivers.
Didn't we
We're in
just
the middle
take
of
2 receivers
rebuilding our
last year?
Canadian core. Double down. I don't know. Create more competition.
What's the receiver crop look like? Is it
there's a couple of guys that are pretty good. It all depends in terms of like who ends up where and who ends up getting taken and downgraded. I mean, Claypool's obviously off the board. Brissett's an interesting guy, but I mean, he's high enough rated that I don't think he'd be there at 7, but never say never. There's a bit of a drop off between him and that O'Leary Orange kid, who I also think will be pretty good, but I think 7 overall might be a little too high for him. So, hard to really say, but at the same time, they bring in a young guy. They got 2 young guys last year in the draft, plus they got Pinkton, plus they've got, what's his name, playing outside. So, I mean, they'd have plenty of competition, but it almost ensures you'd be able to start 2 Canadians. Not 1 and maybe a second. Probably could start 2 Canadians, have 2 good backups for both spots, and maybe have another guy or 2 on the practice roster. So, if you're adamant about having it, maybe just best player available or, at that position.
They say that that's the most important thing in the Canadian Football League is your Canadians, right?
Right. So, and competition's not a bad thing. So we'll see what they can do. But O'Day's proven, at least in my mind, time and time again, that he knows what he's doing. So we'll have to trust that what he does, trade back or who he picks, is going to be a good thing. So should be interesting. I don't know if it's going to get the online hits of the NFL draft. Oh, I know it won't.
Probably not.
Be interesting to see just what kind of
Oh, they might get a bump though.
Yeah, like the NFL saw a definitive bump, so maybe the CFL will do the same. So hopefully, more publicity, the better. So, and then I wanted to ask you guys, there's a lot of talk. You mentioned Jordan Williams. But there's a lot of talk about this Nathan Rourke kid. He's a quarterback, and it's him or Williams. There's some talk, some of the talking heads outside of us, I guess, are saying that basically those are the 2 guys in the running for top spot in the draft. Do you really think, or can you really take them serious that a Canadian quarterback would go 1st overall in the CFL draft?
Not in a million years.
Not sure who that GM would be.
Kavis Reed.
And I'm not saying the kid doesn't have talent. He's definitely talented.
But he's not.
I actually think he could actually play in the CFL. He could start.
Yeah, but you're not going to spend a 1st pick overall on a player who's going to hold a clipboard probably for 2 to 3 years at minimum, if he even gets a shot to be a starter.
Right. But even if he holds a clipboard for 2 years, right? I mean, your Packers just picked a guy that's going to hold a clipboard for 2 years at the quarterback position.
Yeah, but he has
and he was a first round pick. But I mean, more my point though too with Rourke is there's no incentive. There's none. Yeah, he's a good quarterback, but you're in a Canadian draft trying to get the right passports on your team because you need them. This kid's passport doesn't mean shit. You don't get extra credit for having a Canadian quarterback.
Not yet.
Well, until that incentive is actually built in, then what's the point? Why would you spend the top pick on a guy it's de-incentivized as to having him as a Canadian, and you pick him in the Canadian draft?
Yep.
That doesn't make sense to me. The league, as much as they want it, they have to make sure there's incentive before kids like Nathan Rourke are going to get picked that high. And he very well, by talent, could be deserving of getting picked that high. But there's no incentive. So therein, to me, lies sort of the conundrum, right? So all these guys saying, well, it's him or Williams number one overall. Are you guys just not smart enough to figure it out, or do you just not have the balls to call him out and say the league hasn't got the incentive in place to make that a realistic thing?
Yeah, they don't
That's
have the
what
balls.
it is to me.
They don't have the balls.
Wow. I do. They need to incentivize it. They need to incentivize it.
For sure.
Come on.
They should have done that years ago.
For sure. And then you could be talking about Nathan Rourke. And if you actually want to know the truth, you want to up your ratings in terms of your CFL draft and get more viewership, quarterback's going high. Quarterback being the most fan-loved position, right? Walk around a stadium. What's on the back of jerseys? Probably a quarterback's name more often than anything else. So give them what they really love. The part-time fans, they know who the quarterback is. So you'll get your viewership up at the same time. So anyway, and they actually further de-incentivized it because they only have to dress 2 quarterbacks now. They don't have to dress 3. So how's this kid going to learn on the sidelines? Well, he has to become the number 2. He's not going to even get to hold a clipboard. He's going to be in street clothes. So anyway, whatever. Canadian, hope he makes it. Should be an interesting draft. So speaking of Canadian kids and maybe Sasky kids, we'll move to some NHL stuff.
Can we just, before we jump to NHL?
Sure.
I'd like to get your guys' temperature on, because I think I asked this every week, or maybe we didn't last week, but certainly a couple weeks ago I asked what your percentage, where you think, if we're going to see a CFL season this year, if that has changed in the last couple of weeks. Because now we can't even get the PA and the league to talk to each other about what's going to happen if there isn't a season.
Well, I don't want to say so much as to what happens if there's no season, because I really don't think they've hit that drop dead date by any.
I think it's getting close.
The expression. I don't think so. I mean,
when is it?
I think if they were scheduled to start here in mid-May. If they start a month later in June,
they won't.
They won't, but okay.
But if they can get going by mid-June, they're fine. And then after that, they got to start looking at potentially trimming down the schedule, the games, all that kind of stuff to maybe salvage it. It's still a long ways off.
There's still the whole problem is it's a gate-driven league, and how are you going to put people in a stadium?
Well,
that's still the problem.
So, beyond the economics, I just think that in terms of actually being an achievable goal of actually getting a camp even started, I mean, they're a little ways away, but it sure doesn't help when you have the PA and the CFL itself having that pissing match. That does not inspire confidence. If you're a player, a fan, an owner, they don't need that pissing match. There's enough bullshit going on in the world. They don't need that. They don't need that for their game. Nothing.
Kind of seems like some players and agents are looking for an opportunity to get their players out of contracts.
To go where?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what it feels like. But I just don't understand the pissing match.
I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty because, well, like we all know, there's different provinces at different stages of the game.
Right.
But they were in terms of shutdown too. So anyone who's thinking, oh, all of Canada will open up, you really can't, because not all of Canada was in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. We're not in the same boat. So, some people will shut down 2 weeks before others shut down. They're going to open up 2 weeks, maybe later, than the other guy did, right? And it's all on progress. Like you look at, we're here in Sask. I mean, our progress for we got phase 1 and 2 of a 5-stage. Phase 3, everyone's like, well, where's the dates of 3, 4, and 5? you're not getting a goddamn date. Because if you fail at 1 and 2, we're going backwards
Right,
to
exactly.
the start. Go back to go. Do not collect 200. Well, I'll probably collect 200. I'm sure there's a check somewhere in it. But I mean, still, you don't get to go to step 3, 4, and 5 if you suck at 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
and the only way you get to go out of 1 and 2 is you need a little data. Well, the only way you can have respectable data on the whole thing is you need a little bit of a cross section of time. So in order to get to the point where we're getting a plan, it took 4 to 6 weeks for sure, if not more, 8 weeks. So if we have a nice 4 to 6 weeks and we can get to 3 or 4,
that takes you to July 1st.
Right. So, but I mean, if we can get to
start
July
training
1st
camp.
and we can get into, stage 4, then you've got something you can start thinking about. You got something that's very plausible still.
Right. Okay.
But it
so
still
my
depends
question,
on everybody's progress, right? So that's the thing. Quebec is talking about opening elementary schools in 3 weeks.
yeah.
So why couldn't they have a CFL camp? Like if they can pull it off, great, good on them.
Okay.
I don't know.
So my
agree,
next question,
agree or disagree, but
my next question would be, okay, so that all falls into place. Now take Saskatchewan out of the equation because I think we're in a different spot, I think. But say everything goes and they say CFL's going, okay, now everybody buy your tickets and get into the stadium. Other than Saskatchewan, how hard do you think it is to get people in the stadium to watch a CFL game in, say, Toronto or Vancouver, where they already have enough trouble getting people to go to things, let alone when there's no
Fair enough.
vaccine,
Yeah,
there's
the
all
fear of
these things.
infection.
Like to
Right.
me, there's so much more than just, oh, the government's allowing you now to do all these steps. Just getting people to fill a stadium now, I think, is going to be tough.
There's an apprehension for sure, and whatever your thoughts are on it, but there can't help but be some degree of apprehension. But even if they do let us all back in there, I mean, I kind of want to be an optimist about the whole thing though too, in the fact that you look at when even here they rolled out, last Wednesday, they just said, well, here's the plan, here's the first 2 steps, this is what's going to happen. I went out on the weekend to get groceries because we went 2 weeks without going out for groceries, so we were due. There was a uptick in traffic.
For sure. I noticed that today on the roads.
And it wasn't even, go ahead, and it wasn't even sort of like, we weren't even to May 4th when they said we're supposed to get into these phases. That's when it starts. People immediately started going back out. Not crazy, but there was a noticeable difference.
No, for
So
sure.
maybe when they get back to opening up CFL stadiums, there's going to be struggles in some markets, but there might be the same markets they always have struggles in.
Oh,
People,
probably.
if people are going to want to try to get back to doing normal stuff and they're just going to be like, okay, I got to get the hell going here. And there is that uptick. Maybe a place like Saskatchewan's going to be able to fill a stadium. I don't know. I don't know for sure the apprehension level, but
I'd love to be a positive outlook on this, Heath, but I think it's like a 95% chance we don't see a CFL season this year.
I'm probably at about 80%.
I'm here in August, September before you can even start thinking about camps.
Well, and see, the biggest sticking point is stage 5, and I don't know what 3, 4, and 5 in Saskatchewan are or anywhere else, but the first thing they got rid of was what? Mass gatherings, huge gatherings,
yeah, exactly.
right? So the last thing we're going to get back is the 20, 30,000 seat stadiums of people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so one of our loyal listeners, Gord, just posted that Doug Ford says no mass gatherings until December. So that pretty much kiboshes Hamilton, Ottawa, and Toronto games.
There's a mass gathering at a Toronto Argonaut game?
Yeah, on the sidelines.
There is. Oh, that's
God,
just the
that was a
player
good
locker room.
That was a good one. I like that one. Thanks, Gord.
It's hard. It's hard to say. I'm not saying he's right or he's wrong because we're all going into the unknown. But I mean, it was the last thing probably on the docket in terms of coming back. But it's all dependent on how good we do through the first few steps of it. So,
well, and I think everybody
I don't want to say never say never, but
I think everybody's looked at the CFL too and basically come to the agreement that the CFL as a completely gate-driven league, there's no way they could even consider attempting a season without fans like some of these other leagues will that have big sponsorships and TV deals and stuff.
Right. Well, and that's sort of the thing. Like the CFL, in my mind, is sort of like small business. They can't survive the shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point do you end up killing yourself economically rather than through the virus? What's the greater threat?
That's a completely different conversation, but
oh, true, but I mean that's kind of the question being posed, right? Like with some of the governments and some of the regulations and shutdowns and this and that and the other thing. How many businesses are going to go under?
how much death do you want?
How much debt do you want? How
exactly?
Like,
they're all numbers.
Cutting off your nose to save your face. Like,
but they're all numbers, Heath. It's which are you morally okay with? Are you okay with more death, less losing money, or losing more money and less death? Where do you fall on that scale? That's where we're at.
Right, but statistically, more death. What is statistically more death than COVID-19?
Well,
a lot of shit.
A lot of things are.
But
I just said, but what is that number? What are you okay with?
But yeah, well, but I mean, at the same time, the hard part in that whole scenario is, right? What are you okay with? Well, I'm not okay with 50,000, just for a number, 50,000 cancer-related deaths a year in Canada, but they happen. Mm-hmm. But are we going to hit 50,000? Well, we're not with COVID, but we're not because we did what we did.
Right.
So if you'd have just let it go and run its course, then you could compare it to what cancer kills in a year, right? You'd have an apple versus an apple. That's the thing with this whole thing is you don't know how much it would have impacted if you'd let it go. But like you said, there's the moral dilemma of how can I possibly let this go?
Yeah, I think with a public crisis, a public health crisis, is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because if you do everything right, then there is no crisis, and everybody goes at the end, well, you overreacted. And if you don't overreact, then shit goes south, and they say you didn't do enough.
Right. So, in my mind, I think the opening up has to happen for a variety of reasons, especially here in Saskatchewan. We've managed it quite well. We've earned the opportunity to see if we can move ahead and keep it contained. And if we can, great. If we can't, we go back. That's it.
I think that's logical thinking and a good way to roll something out.
Well, we'll see what happens with the CFL. I wish I had a better, straighter answer for you, Gord, but if you've been watching all the politicians on TV, you're not getting straight answers when you tune into things. So why would this show be any different?
I don't know, but
right?
Gord's just full of all kinds of good information here.
Is he?
Yes,
okay.
He says cancer is not a contagious disease, so
no, true, but I mean there are other influenza viruses that are contagious that we don't do a whole lot about. They just
But Regan Hoffert agrees with you.
Does he?
Yeah, instead just stole his thoughts. Took him right out of his head. Thought stealer. Back to sports. Moving on to NHL.
Smart guy.
NHL, you had a good something, a feel-good story or something about NHL?
Well, I lost in the draft and all the other pandemonium that goes on around us. Sunday night, former Humboldt Bronco captain Grayson Cameron committed to playing a little Division III hockey for Northland College in Wisconsin.
Nice.
He broke his back in the bus crash, and he got back on the ice for a few games this year, had a handful of points, But broken back, came back, playing hockey again, getting an opportunity to go to college.
Pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
Fucking A, kid.
That's
Fucking A.
great
Well
news.
done.
Yeah.
So
That is a good news story.
You know, being a Sasky boy like we are, that's got to tickle your heart a little bit. So some stick-to-itiveness.
Right in the cockles.
So anyway, not to bring up the COVID crap again, but the NBA is looking to reopen. But they got some terms and conditions around it, which kind of begs the question, why the fuck do it at all? They're reopening facilities on May 8th in states that no longer have an active shelter-in-place order. Okay, fair enough. But you've got what, like 20-odd, 30 teams, right? So, I mean, half of them, or say even 2/3 of them, don't have the shelter-in-place. What do you do with the guy? How is that fair competition with the guys who do?
It's not.
Well, that's what I keep hearing.
Not.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
You want to know what? The first lesson in life you should learn is life isn't fair.
Bingo.
Fucking get over it, right?
Exactly.
This is not what happens on the court. This is like something that is completely, like, I don't have any problem with that. And I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry you guys can't get out there because your state still has people locked down. But you know what? You'll be able to get out there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, yeah. So the thing that I kind of found a little wonky was, there we go.
Where'd you go?
Little bump there. No more than 4 players can be in the facility at the same time with no coaches or assistant coaches. They can't be present. Okay. All group activity remains prohibited, so they can't play any type of scrimmage or practice any kind of drills. Okay. And they can't use any of the team facilities like the gym or health clubs. Why would I go to a
What
gym?
can they do?
Exactly.
Right. And I'm going to go with like what? 2 guys? 3 guys? Well, they better be the same 2 or 3 guys, because now like we're mingling too many people day after day. Like, anyway, all player participation is voluntary. So how many of these guys are going to show up if they're a little bit nervous or whatever, right? So, and for the states and cities where they have the order to stay in place, their NBA said they're working on alternative arrangements. So you're going to drive to a different place, or how far is that?
It's going to send the whole team to another state.
Well, and it sort of goes into the same thing that the NHL players went through. Some of the NHL guys coming back are going to have a difficult time because they went back home to Sweden or Finland or Germany, right? Or Russia. So there's no international flight that comes from there.
Well, they
How
could
do
probably
they get back?
They could maybe get an international flight, but what are they going to do? Because they have to self-isolate for 14 days once they get back.
Exactly. So now, do they make them come back now and self-isolate? Would you come back and leave your family back in Sweden?
In case something happens?
In case something happens. So, I mean, the NBA, the same thing. They've got European players, or international players, if you will. So
what happens? So what happens? Say you're the Raptors. You fly to wherever is an open spot to have games at, let's say, San Antonio, and then you fly back. Does then the whole team have to isolate for 14 days, or is just they're going to just keep them all together for the entire playoff run? Like,
it's crazy, because like, even, you know, walking through some of the commentary on it, and I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, Toronto, it's Canada, the border's locked down, international travel, 14 days. So even if you opened up every state or every team facility in this case, so that they could go and they could actually do their thing as a team, right? They get to the point where they're going to play games, right, with no fans. How do the Toronto Raptors fly into Toronto? or out of Toronto? How does someone fly into Toronto?
They'd
Like
have to
pretty
make
much, you would still
You'd
have to
have to have
cancel
special
Toronto's
exemption.
games.
you'd have to make the
Toronto would have to
Raptors
play
an
in another
essential
site.
service, just like Florida made the
They-
UFC.
Yeah, they would get a special exemption
Then you'd
of
be
some
able to
sort, I would
travel.
think.
I'd assume that's what they'd have to do.
That's a political
But I mean,
hot
those
potato.
kind of things get negotiated. All like those kind of things get negotiated. For example, for like rock stars and shit, right? When they got like bad,
Matt would know.
some criminal misdemeanor shit that's causing them, you can't come into the country, and the next thing you know, they make a couple of phone calls and somebody gets a little grease under the table and
Keith
everything's fine again.
And they're
right?
in.
That kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, with the public health being an issue though too, right? Like wouldn't the Raptors just play somewhere else? I know they were talking about only having a select few sites where these
Right.
teams will even
That
play.
would make more sense.
So why open the team facilities at all? Just go to that fucking place and just say from 10 till 12, we're going to get the
10 to
Raptors
12,
in
it's
here.
the
And
Raptors.
then, like,
12 till 2 is the Celtics. Whatever.
right. Like, just get them to that point anyway. That sounds like what they're going to be doing anyhow. So let them go train there, work out there, like get ready there. I don't know. To me, some of these restrictions that they still have on them getting together in the team facilities, I don't expect any NBA players to go to team facilities. What the fuck's the point? I can't work on drills. I can't work with coaches. I can't actually work out in the gym. Well, all I need is a hoop on the end of my driveway. That's basically all you're offering me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I may as well stay home.
Yeah, Elton John's got that kind of a practice space.
Yeah. Like, so there you are. So I don't know. It's one of those, we're trying to sell a little bit of hope and we're trying to work some stuff out. But then when you look at it, you're like, oh God, just pump the brakes a little bit. Like, cool it. It's okay. You got time. You got a little time yet, NBA. So
They're trying hard, though. They really want to make things happen.
yeah,
Run out
well,
of money.
I think well, and I think though too, like, pro sports in the States is a little bit more, deep rooted in their cultural fabric as it were. So, that's part of it too, right? And the return to normalcy when you're that deep rooted into the sports sort of side of things is how you would maybe gauge that there's normalcy kind of reestablished. So
I think
hard
getting
to-
what you want just because you want it is woven into the American fabric.
well, there's a little bit of that too, right? So, but it would be a healthy distraction for a lot of people to have sports back, but it's
sure
got to
it
be
would.
done fairly and
Be a
smartly.
healthy distraction
So,
if I could jam with my friends again, but that ain't
Well,
happening either. Be a healthy
more of
distraction
my-
to
more-
go to a bar and play a gig, but that ain't happening
Yeah.
either.
more my concern is not really sports. I know we do a lot of sports on our podcast, but my main thing is everybody needs to know that they're gainfully employed in some capacity again. That's the most important thing. Because if you want to see chaos and pandemonium and crime and all kinds of shit hit the fan, a job is a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you out of a lot of trouble. And if there's a lot of people available to making trouble, there will be trouble. So let's just get that part of shit sorted out first. So anyway,
Here, here.
that's about all I got.
That was a good show. Good show.
That was fun.
It's
Not
nice to
bad,
talk to you guys
considering
every
we had nothing
week.
to talk
It really is. And hopefully
It was slightly
we do
above
get
average.
some more sports, but I'm telling you, man, it's not looking optimistic for this next year of anything being normal.
Well, and that's sort of the thing. Sometimes it's just the process is long.
But
That's just how it is. So people have to realize this process it's going to take a little while, maybe.
sometimes things
Depends.
are tough that we have to get
Depends
through.
on how you behave.
But
So
I think this is going to be a perspective changer for many.
for sure. For sure.
And you know what? There's going to be some positive changes potentially coming out of it too. So
I think mostly
you know,
positive,
as
to be
hard
completely
as
honest.
hard as it is, there's definitely positives that can come of it. You know, the well, I don't know if you guys watched the Michael Moore documentary on the green stuff, right? On
It's on my list. I
environmentalism
haven't
and everything
watched it
else.
yet,
But
but
I
I'm
mean,
going to.
you look at it from the fact that everybody that can work from home is working from home. The carbon footprint, not that I'm a big tree hugger type guy, but the carbon footprint now goes down significantly with less cars on the road. That's an environmental impact gain, you know, a net positive. I know the oil sector is struggling, but I mean, you know, we're still going to burn oil products. We're still going to need them. But at the same time, less cars on the road. Well, some of these companies run around and they throw money all over the place. Oh, yeah, look how green we are. Let your people work from home. That might be the most green thing you could do.
Absolutely.
I sure hope the companies
So if you can
stick
do it,
with
do it, right?
Absolutely.
Like they try to sell you on, well, here we put a recycling bin on every floor. Well, that's something, but it's kind of a fucking joke. Like, you know, in terms of the things you could do versus the things
really
you did
more
do.
symbolic,
Right.
as far as actual
You know.
impact.
Yeah.
So to me, there's just things like that, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why can't people stay at home? And there are companies talking now that I've read up on that are very much about keeping their people at home. They've done well.
Well, yeah, now that some of these companies are realizing that some of their employees are actually somewhat trustworthy and they're not going to turn into a bunch of, out of control monkeys by letting them out of your watchful eye.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't need to be micromanaged. I don't need to be
preschooler.
controlled.
Oh, yeah.
I need to be
preschooler.
enabled,
Motivated.
and I need to be enabled, and I need to have your ass out of my way. Like, you know, I'll get her done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, there are some definitive positives that I can see maybe coming from it. So it doesn't always feel like it when you're in the middle of it, but little things, man, can make a big difference. So
Absolutely.
Anyway,
on that note, this has been episode number 20 of the Above Average Joe's podcast, and we'll catch you next week. I'm Kyle. Heath.
I'm Heath.
Matt. And we will catch you
Matt.
guys next week. Laters.
Later.
Laters.